The wind crosses the high plains before dawn, long and low, as if the earth itself is remembering. Out there, the land keeps its own counsel, quiet, secretive, stretching farther than any one life can hold. In 1872, before fences carved the prairie into certainty, the frontier was a place where destinies were bartered, traded, taken, and sometimes, just sometimes, restored. This story begins with a promise made over a kitchen table, and the thunder of hooves that answered it. Her name was Evelyn Hart, the rancher's daughter with ember-bright will, and eyes that caught light like river water. She had never left the valley she was born in, nor the narrow expectations braided around her life. But that was before a single decision, made without her, bound her to a people she had never met, and to a man who would become the axis her life turned upon. His name was Tahua, a Comanche warrior known for two things: his silence and his mercy, a trait whispered about like something half mythical in a world sharpened by conflict. But no one at the Hart Ranch knew that yet. Not until the day her hand was traded away like cattle. Part 1. The Barter. Evelyn's father had not meant cruelty. He had meant survival. Drought had carved the land thin. Cattle were dying, fences sagged without repair, and creditors circled like buzzards with patient shadows. And so, when a silver-haired intermediary arrived with an offer crafted in careful words, the choice seemed less like betrayal, more like a lifeline. A marriage alliance. A promise of protection from raids and trespassers. A year's worth of horses, healthy ones, delivered to the Hart Ranch. And in return, the hand of his eldest daughter. Not sold. Not stolen. Just exchanged. The kind of deal men made on the frontier, where the lines between necessity and morality blurred like heat on dry dirt. Evelyn didn't hear the bargain until it was done. Didn't even hear her own name in the exchange, because she was standing outside, washing blood from a saddle blanket, whispering to herself that life might still bend towards something soft. When the truth came, it came like thunder. But thunder does not undo the lightning that precedes it. At dawn the next morning, she was placed, gently but firmly, on a wagon, a packed trunk at her feet. Her father did not meet her eyes. Her brother stayed inside. Only her mother held her, trembling like a reed until practical sense forced her to let go. And then the wagon rolled toward a destiny she had not chosen. Part 2. The Handover. The caravan carrying her reached a broad meadow by dusk, where a column of Comanche riders waited like carved stone figures against the dying sun. Among them stood Tahua, tall, unarmed, expression unreadable, as he watched the wagon arrive. Evelyn stepped out with dust on her boots and fury in her throat. The interpreter began the ceremony. Short, simple, matter-of-fact. A trade. A promise. A binding. Tahua did not reach for her wrist. Did not claim her. Did not even look at her the way a man examines what has been given to him. Instead, he spoke 4 quiet words in Comanche, and the interpreter hesitated, startled. He said, the man translated slowly, that he accepts the horses, but not the woman. Silence fell across the meadow like a dropped veil. Evelyn felt confusion bite first, then a strange, sharp bloom of humiliation. Was she so unwanted even in barter? But Tahua stepped forward, voice low, words deliberate. The interpreter swallowed, then repeated them. He says a life is not a thing. He says a woman chooses who she rides beside. And he says he will not take a bride who is given away like winter stock. And then, softer, almost reluctant, he says the choice is hers. The world seemed to still. Evelyn stared at Tahua, the man who had been promised her, the man who was now refusing to take what had been offered. For the first time since she learned of the arrangement, she exhaled. But her father, red-faced and choking on pride, erupted into protest. Debts, obligations, agreements. Tahua listened without blinking. When the older man finished, Tahua answered with a final sentence that landed like iron. He says the agreement stands. Only the marriage does not. Protection, safety, horses, those remained. But Evelyn belonged to herself again. The caravan rode off in confusion. Her father did not look back. And Evelyn stood alone in the meadow as the sun bled purple over the plains. Free, but with nowhere left to go. Part 3. A New Allegiance. Tahua did not ask if she wished to return home. He had understood the look in her father's eyes, not sorrow. Relief. So instead, he offered her something impossible. A place to stay until she decided her path. Not as property. Not as prisoner. As guest. And so she rode with them, awkwardly at first, her skirts bunching over the saddle, her palms blistering, her body swaying with unfamiliar rhythm. She expected stares, hostility, suspicion. What she found was quieter, curiosity, some amusement, perhaps a few cautious welcomes. The Comanche camp along the river was alive with evening fires and murmured stories, with children darting between tents and horses stamping in soft ground. Tahua did not leave her alone entirely, nor hover over her. His presence was a steady line of calm, a quiet shadow when needed, a respectful distance when not. What unsettled her most was his silence. Not cold, just observant. Measuring nothing, expecting nothing. For the first time in her life, Evelyn found herself without a script, without a role to play, without a future carved for her. And it was frightening, because the world felt bigger than ever. But it was also freeing. Part 4. Firelight and Choice. Nights in the camp unfurled with a gentleness she hadn't anticipated. Drums softened the dark. Women ground corn while sharing quiet jokes. Elder storytellers painted the past with voices deep as canyon stone. And Evelyn, once the rancher's daughter with calloused hands and a quiet heart, learned things she could never have imagined. She learned the way horses were spoken to, not commanded. She learned the language of smoke, of beadwork, of care woven into every gesture. She also learned the truth of Tahua. He was not the fierce warrior she had imagined. He was something far rarer. A man who fought only when no other path remained. A man who carried loss like an old scar. A man who valued choice, because he had seen lives stripped of it. He spoke little, but when he did, it was with intent. And in those words, Evelyn found herself listening more deeply than she ever had before. There were moments, small, uninvited, where their paths crossed in ways that lingered. A shared silence while watching the river. A brush of hands while tending a restless horse. A glance held a heartbeat too long. But nothing was asked of her. Nothing was expected. Her life, perhaps for the first time, was her own to shape. Part 5. A storm on the horizon. Trouble came with boot tracks. One evening, scouts returned with news. Armed riders were heading toward the valley, men with greed in their bones and violence in their eyes. Men who saw land as something to seize, not share. Their target was the Hart Ranch. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She had not forgiven her father, not fully. But she could not ignore danger when it pointed toward home. Tahua saw the worry in her face before she spoke a word. "You choose," he said simply. She chose to warn them. So Tahua gathered riders, not as saviors, not as soldiers, but as allies, and escorted her back across the plains to the land she once thought she'd die on. The tension upon arriving was thick enough to choke. Her father bristled with defensiveness, her brother with shame, her mother with quiet relief. But when Evelyn explained the danger, pride fell away. Tahua stood behind her, not claiming her, not speaking for her, simply standing as a pillar she could lean against if she wished. They fortified the ranch, prepared for the coming storm. And when trouble arrived in the form of roughed-up, liquor-soaked men hungry for land and easy winnings, they found a united front waiting. Shots cracked. Dust flew. Yells tore at the dusk. Evelyn didn't hide. She helped reload rifles, guided injured ranch hands, kept horses from bolting. And Tahua, quiet, precise, fought like a man who protected not territory, but people. In the end, the attackers fled, nursing wounds and newfound respect for a ranch that stood taller than greed. When it was over, Evelyn realized something profound. Home was no longer the ranch behind her. It was the man standing beside her. Part 6. The Offer of Freedom. After the danger passed, Tahua prepared to leave. The alliance had been honored. His duty fulfilled. Evelyn was safe, and his place, he believed, was no longer here. But something in her resisted the idea. As dawn spilled over the plains, she approached him, heart unsteady but resolute. "What happens now?" she asked. He turned, his eyes soft in the morning light. "You choose," he answered, like he had from the beginning. She felt the weight of those words settle into her bones. She could return to the life expected of her. Or she could step into the unknown beside a man who had returned to her the very thing the world had tried to take, her agency, her voice, her future. And so, Evelyn Hart, daughter of the frontier, child of hard earth and windy horizons, made her final choice. Not because she was bartered, not because she was bound, but because at last she was free. She chose him. And Tahua, who had once refused to claim what was not freely given, bowed his head with reverence, not ownership. The past was behind them, the plains ahead, and the story of their lives, two worlds crossing, two hearts learning, unfolded on the wind.